Welcome back to Close Up. With New Hampshire settling into a new normal for the summer, we're going to flex back into some campaign interviews here on Close Up ahead of the September primary. This morning, we start with Matt Mowers, a Republican running for Congress in the 1st District. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Adam, thanks for having me.
So for starters, this might be the first time some voters here in New Hampshire are seeing you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to go to Washington.
Sure. So, look, my wife, Cassie, and I live in Bedford, and I've worked for a lot of causes and candidates I believed in all my life. And actually then eventually had an opportunity to serve at the State Department down in Washington, D.C., serving as senior White House advisor, and then also as chief of staff in our global health office, working with Dr. Deborah Birx to implement our global HIV program, where we took on a global pandemic and were able to help save millions of lives. And I decided to run because, while living in our district, while living in New Hampshire, I saw that Chris Pappas, our representative, wasn't representing us anymore. He said he was going to be different. He said he was going to bring people together. He said he would stand up to his party leadership when he needed to, and he didn't do any of that. In fact, he's actually voted with Nancy Pelosi 100% of the time. And so I just felt in my heart that we could do better, that we could have independent leadership go to Washington, D.C., fight for New Hampshire, and deliver for New Hampshire's working class families. My dad was a construction worker. In fact, he was a diver at one point on the Seabrook power plant. So I know what it's like to grow up in a middle-class family. I know what it's like to have to pick up and move every 6 months when, he picks up a new job. And what I want to make sure is that working-class families like that have a voice in Washington, D.C. again, and that they know that there's someone looking out for their best interests as well as their tax dollars.
So this is a swing district, but it's potentially going to be an uphill battle against Congressman Pappas. He won in a lot of red towns and areas in Bedford, where you live, for instance. How do you make the case for change to those independent voters who sided largely with him in 2018?
Well, we're already seeing, Adam, that a lot of people who supported Chris Pappas 2 years ago are really frustrated by the representation they've gotten. In fact, some of his top supporters are now big supporters of mine because they feel like he just broke his word to them. For all the reasons I said before, he said he was going to be independent and different, and yet the first vote he made was for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker. He went to Washington, D.C. So we're going to go out to the district. We're going to go house to house, handshake to handshake when we're allowed to start shaking hands again, and we're going to earn the vote and trust of every single person one by one. And we're going to ensure that they understand that, unlike Chris Pappas, I'm going to keep my word to them. I signed a term limits pledge because I believe we need to fundamentally change the direction of Congress. And you're only going to do that when you actually change the structure down there. And it's also because I want people to know I don't care about what party leadership says. I don't care about what some lobbyist whispering in your ear says down Washington, D.C. The only thing that matters is the word that you keep to your constituents. And that's all I'm going to care about.
There's a lot of discussion in the wake of the killing of George Floyd about what to do next. Congressman Pappas has said he opposes defunding the police. But what reforms, if any, do you think are necessary to the nation's police forces in the wake of Mr. Floyd's killing?
Yeah, I think what all of us saw in Minneapolis was tragic. I'm glad that the police officers are being held accountable out there. But what I'll tell you is that we have to work with law enforcement as well as other community groups to ensure that we're making smart reforms, not ones that are just done in the heat of the political moment. The fact of the matter is that being a police officer is a hard job. Manchester has some of its highest turnover amongst new recruits. I've been talking to a lot of the Manchester police officers about it. We need to make sure they know we have their back. And look, Chris Pappas didn't come out in support in opposition to defunding the police until days later, and even now is still willing to support a piece of legislation that Nancy Pelosi put forth that many police officers think would be damaging to police officers around the country. And so I think we need to actually have police officers back. Yes, we need to improve community policing. Yes, we need to make reforms in individual police departments where there's issues. But ultimately, our police officers are on the front line every single day in our communities, keeping us safe. We ask them to do a lot, and we need to have their back.
We see these protests and the calls for justice. Do you support the Black Lives Matter movement?
Look, I think we all want justice. We all want equality. And so, I want to ensure that everyone, regardless of race, regardless of any background, feels safe in their community. And so whatever we have to do to ensure that Americans feel safe where they live, I'm supportive of making those types of reforms and efforts. But the fact of the matter is that defunding the police is a reckless, dangerous idea. And it's one that the Democratic Party down in Washington, D.C. is gathering behind. Even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said that this new piece of legislation that Nancy Pelosi proposed, that Chris Pappas is likely to support, is nothing but repackaging, was her words, repackaging of defunding the police. That's a dangerous idea, and it's bad for New Hampshire.
You just received the endorsement of President Trump in your Republican primary via Twitter. You served in his administration, as you noted. Do you envision being able to disagree with him in any way? Because we know that's hard for Republicans to do these days if you're there in Congress.
Well, look, Adam, I'm always going to speak my mind. I'm always going to represent the people of New Hampshire, regardless of the political consequences. So, look, I support the president. I think he's doing a lot of remarkable things to help move our country forward. And in fact, I want to work with him on whether it's lowering healthcare prices and prescription drug prices, whether it's building the wall to stop the influx of drugs. I mean, I'll tell you, one of the first briefings I received when I was at the State Department was about how the flow of illegal drugs across the southern border makes their way up to northern New England, including in our communities here in New Hampshire, and affects us personally. So I'd work with him to build the wall. I'd work with him to continue to ensure that America's interests are driving our foreign policy. And then ultimately, I'd work with him to make sure that we're saving Americans' tax dollars money. And I think the most important thing that's going to happen from all this is that as a response to the shutdowns of COVID-19, we need to bring our economy back. And we need someone who's going to go to Washington, D.C. and work with the president to do that, create the environment to bring our businesses back, whether that's more support for businesses that have been disproportionately affected by shutdowns of COVID-19, or whether it's holding China accountable, incentivizing companies to move manufacturing from China to the United States. I think New Hampshire could be on the forefront of actually taking in a lot of those manufacturing and high-tech manufacturing jobs, especially in critical areas of national security, as well as pharmaceutical production. I think it's an important piece. I look forward again to work on that.
There's a lot of discussion right now in Washington about renaming military bases that are named in honor of Confederate generals like Fort Hood and Fort Bragg. The president says he wouldn't even consider such a change. Do you agree with him?
Yeah, well, look, this hasn't been on the forefront of my mind. You know, in New Hampshire, we wouldn't be personally affected by it. So I would, I've got an open mind on that. I think ultimately, though, Condoleezza Rice said it well. You don't want to erase your history either. You want to learn from it. So I think it's important that we learn from our history and look forward, and obviously learn from those mistakes. I think we all understand that we need to do more to ensure that we are living every single day of trying to help ensure that we have an equal and just society. That's important for every single person I speak to on the campaign trail. But as far as changing names and erasing history, it has been on the forefront of my mind. And I'm not sure that's going to do much to actually ensure justice is delivered moving forward.
I think the idea is that it's the honor of having that. Why would someone who took up arms against the United States specifically to ensure that their fellow human beings were continued to be held in bondage, why did they deserve that honor?
Yeah, no, I think ultimately we need to be recognizing and honoring those who've served our country, and I think that's important. And that's what we try to do anytime we name, whether it's a government building or whether it's an army base after them. So I would support naming them after American heroes.
So regarding that COVID-19 pandemic, you talked a lot about how we bring the economy back. What are some specific steps and pieces of legislation you would like to see come forward in Congress if you're there to try and revive the economy?
Yeah, well, I think there's an important thing they can do right now. I mean, a lot of businesses, including especially in the restaurant and the hospitality industry, have been disproportionately affected by the shutdowns of COVID-19, and I throw in seasonal businesses there as well. Well, I do believe that we need to provide some more assistance to get those businesses back. They're just so vitally important to our community. It's something I've been speaking out about. It's something I've been working on and actually connecting small business owners with the Small Business Administration as well as the executive branch, because I think it's that important. But I also think we need to learn lessons from COVID-19. One of those is that our country is overly reliant on China, whether it's for production of PPE, whether it's for production of our pharmaceutical base ingredients, whether it's for rare earth minerals that go into high-tech equipment for our national security. And so we need to incentivize companies to bring that production back to the United States. It's not only the best interest of American workers and manufacturers, it's also in the best interest of our national security interests. And I can tell you from my time at the State Department, China is a bad faith actor in a number of sectors in the world. They use bags of cash to buy influence across the globe, and we need to be cognizant of that. I was there when the president announced the National Security Strategy in 2017, which for the first time in American history labeled China a competitor to the United States, which they are. And I think we need to be eyes wide open on that moving forward. I think the other piece of all this is that we need to ensure we're ready for the next pandemic. And so let's work with the private sector to ensure that we actually have accessible, rapid testing available, and then also making sure that we have treatments and diagnosis available as well. I think a big piece of that is ensuring that we do everything we can to speed up the production of a vaccine. Right now, we're actually on track as the United States to have a vaccine for COVID-19 within 10 months at a time when traditionally would take 10 years. It just goes to show you that with leadership and by working in cooperation with the private sector, there's really nothing we can't get done.
I do want to sneak in one last question before we wrap up here. Second Amendment rights, always a big topic of discussion, especially in Republican primaries in New Hampshire. First, tell us about the guns you own and what changes, if any, you would accept at the federal level to gun laws.
Yeah, look, I'm a strong supporter of Second Amendment rights. I grew up, with shotguns and rifles for hunting purposes in our household, and I have a 12 gauge myself. But I support Second Amendment rights. I think it's an important part of our history, and I think it's also an important constitutional right. The same way that I support every other amendment, we have to make sure that we support our Second Amendment rights as well.
All right, Matt Mowers, we'll see you out there on the trail, whatever it happens to look like in this pandemic. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Adam.